feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Friday morning. It's December 27th. We're recording this, obviously, after the Wolves' Christmas Day win over the Mavs on Wednesday and before their weekend set here against the Rockets and Spurs. And I guess before it gets outdated, the plan today is to discuss that Christmas Day game. And to do that, I have Kyle Theige here with me. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. How are we doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well. That was I was thinking about on Christmas when I woke up Christmas morning and Santa had arrived, and my dad texted me and we were both like, "Oh, I guess we got to watch that Wolves game." And this will be a constant theme for me throughout this pod because I don't know, it's just the end of the year, and I do love a good New Year's. I love a fresh start. I love being reflective, and
nice.
I think that sucks. And we'll get into it a little more, but I think it sucks that I woke up thinking that way, and I want to change how I think because for many years doing this, I was like, man, I really would love to just have my favorite team play on Christmas.
Sure.
And the vibes of this, which I think will be another emphasis this week too, as they've kind of pivoted a little bit, and we'll talk about some actual basketball stuff that maybe helped cause those pivots. But yeah, I'm mad at myself that I woke up that day being like, I can't believe I got to do this, when for years covering this team, I was like, man, I would love to have my team on Christmas. So impressive game. It was funny listening to you and Jace and then just thinking about all the stuff that happened because everyone thought they were going to lose. So, yeah, let's break it down because I thought there was real stuff, especially when you and I rewatched the game virtually yesterday, that, right. Oh, wow, okay, that's different. And I think we should talk about it.
Yeah, so, I mean, as me and Kyle literally started watching the game, him in Portland, me in Minneapolis, on the 26th. Not that, but we had it on at our place too, but it was like kind of like the fourth quarter. It was like right when the food was like coming out, and it was so I did watch fourth quarter of it originally, and and then kind of like later in the day, you kind of like you look at your phone, you got texts and stuff like that, and a lot of like frustration with Ant stuff. And again, like for me, you might have like I was sitting on the couch with my brothers watching the first half, and I'm like, it was kind of awesome. In the first half, I'm like, what did he do in the fourth quarter? Because it seemed like there was a lot of frustration, and it was. And then we did rewatch it. In the fourth quarter, there was more of that congested. He did have a couple of those turnovers. But I don't know for me. I feel like I'm the first one to always be like, Ant needs to improve his playmaking and this and that, and the defense was loaded up against him. To me, watching it like with a fresh mind, that fourth quarter, I thought was about Kyrie being really, really good, and them and Dallas kind of attacking through Kyrie just was over and over again. It was like calling somebody up and pick and roll, and at first it was DiVincenzo, or then it was Nikhil, and he was out. Whatever. It could have been better, obviously, in the fourth quarter. Or I don't know. I guess what I wanted to say to you is like, am I getting numb? Am I lowering the bar of what I want out of Ant in fourth, or expect out of Ant in fourth quarters? Or what did you think about it? Because it was like online and everything, it seemed like there was some frustration with Ant after that game. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're so right. And it was an odd game for me because usually I'm just watching these in isolation in the dark. And the first half, like you, I was drinking. In the second half, most of the second half, I was holding a baby. So I really couldn't get as animated as I want to. But after rewatching it the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, I believe, I came away.
You drank and then held the baby?
Well, we're just passing it around. That's what you do. It was just
with the baby or the beer?
I was sitting I was sitting down holding the baby. It wasn't like I was moving around. Sure. I actually came away from that game, rewatching it, a little less impressed with the Wolves in the first half. A first half that was probably like thought of as really good offense. And then in the second half, it wasn't that I was disappointed in Ant or the way that, I mean, they definitely got super, super stagnant, sticky, whatever the bad terms are for that fourth quarter. But you go rewatch that fourth quarter. I think at the end of 3, it was 90-68. The Wolves were outscored 31-15 in the fourth quarter. It got really close, right? Like Clay hits that three with about a minute left. It's 101-99. But it did seem like a team that knew the probability. I mean, I think the Mavs had like a 2.8% chance to win the game going into the fourth. But I was just more impressed with Kyrie because Kyrie and Luka, who Luka Doncic gets hurt midway through, I think, the second quarter and goes out, and that was a big turning
late
point.
second quarter. I think it was like 3 minutes left in it.
Yeah, so that was a big turning point for this. And the Wolves, early on again, just didn't really have any way to stop him. Jaden just doesn't move properly, and then Nikhil's too small, and Ant's their best matchup, but he doesn't want to do that for 48 minutes. But dude, just go watch that fourth quarter again. It's Kyrie just insane shot making, which was fun, again, with the Christmas theme. Because when I think of like Christmas basketball and watching it with my family or your relatives and loved ones, like the best game ever was when they had Christmas themed jerseys, which by the way we need to bring back. But Warriors, Cavs, and it was like LeBron and Kyrie versus the death lineup or Steph and Clay and Draymond. So it was fun to see kind of the Uncle Drew for 12 minutes again. But I don't know if I would go back again and watch that and think like, oh my God, defensive lapses. It was just better offense against pretty good defense. But then on the flip side, the Wolves had they didn't run anything. They didn't do it. They went back to their old ways. They brought back the starters. But yeah, to your point, I do think that you can poke holes in how the Wolves played in the second half. But there are nights, right, in the association, like you see this, where a guy just gets on a heater. Kyrie knew I have no other teammates that really need the ball. They're all going to set screens for me in space. I just thought it was a Kyrie masterclass, and the Wolves were lucky to pull it out.
Yeah, I did too. And maybe I just have lowered my bar of expectation for what Wolves' fourth quarter offense looks like too. I don't know. So maybe that's a whole.
You might have, but we shouldn't. And I know you're not trying to, but yeah, if 101.99, if they don't get a couple, and we should talk about Ant, I guess, right now. If we don't get a couple, Ant, he has that kind of, I think, driving left layup, and then he has that kind of off the glass
he won the
to seal
game.
it.
Yeah.
If they don't get that, this is a very different pod, and maybe we're doing one yesterday because it's an emergency.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, let's start with the start of the game, because I thought for sure in the first quarter, I really liked how Ant was playing, and specifically going at like what Dallas was giving them. He had 8 points and 4 assists in that first quarter, and I thought that kind of like set the tone into the second quarter of like enough movement so that the Julius and the bench group, that's a new thing which we'll talk about later, like what the tone Ant set in the first quarter I thought carried over to the second quarter. So I thought that was like, as I'm going through just grading Ant or whatever in that game, I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm not seeing this very often night to night from Ant. Like that was a really strong start, and it wasn't just like crazy shot making. Obviously, had like some of that buzzer beaters crazy or whatever, or the shot clock violation where they like stepped to the guy. But it was just like effective getting downhill. They've ran the same play. I think they're really trying to get him started. I don't know if they ran the same first play of the game in both the Atlanta game on Monday and Dallas game, that specifically set up to get him to like turn the corner and get downhill, like doing exactly what they want to do. It's like Finch is like, here, this is the way, like start with this and it will work. And then he kind of starts getting down there. And then once the help starts coming in, he was finding guys in the corner, and I thought it was interesting. He always seemed to be going the direction that Luka was. Cause like Luka, isn't really like, he's not a very good help defender. And it was just like a good, effective punishment of Dallas not devoting every single resource to Ant. They were trying to do help versus like, they weren't trying to take the ball out of his hands. They were trying to slow him down. And I think what we're learning is the best thing to do, particularly in this current construction of the Wolves' bad offense. You should probably just try and get the ball out of Ant's hands. But they didn't do that. Ant read that, picked that apart in the first quarter. Again, I think that set a really good tone. And it wasn't as good in the fourth quarter. If he did that first quarter in the fourth quarter, it would be like, damn, that's one of the best Ant games on a big stage. But I guess it'd been a while since I'd seen like a good full first half from Ant. I'm like, good scoring, good playmaking, engaged, all that. I thought the first half was good, and maybe that just made me turn off some of my overall frustration I've had with his offensive play of late.
It did. I don't think the running the ball analogy works here totally, but a lot of times these NFL games start by a team trying to establish the run. And back to your same play they ran in Atlanta versus Dallas, I actually think that's probably I might be just grasping at straws, but I think that's actually more meaningful than we thought in the moment. And I'm glad you brought that up because those 2 game sealing buckets to win the game were Ant going downhill again. You know what I mean? It was kind of like remembering of this is, yes, you came out firing to start the season and you were leading the league in threes, but Anthony Edwards' greatest skill still is his physicality, his speed, his strength, and his ability to get to the rim. And to start the game kind of reminded him, but also that's how they closed the game too. So, I mean, I think all of his points in the fourth quarter came within 10 feet of the rim. So it wasn't like he was, getting all his buckets by threes, but I think that's really important. And to the Luka thing, it might be like a grain of sand, but it seemed like Anthony Edwards hunted Luka Doncic more in the first quarter than he did in the 5 games against them in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was like a thing, right? Like they just let Luka kind of just sit on Jaden or anyone in the corner and rest. And that is a way to defend once Luka comes back. Or that is a way to go at this Mavs team is make Luka defend because he's going to exert so much offensive energy. You got to kind of put him in stuff defensively. And I thought Ant did a really good job in that first quarter.
Yeah, I did clip these. This is the first play from both the Atlanta and the Dallas game here. And he's just trying to get the same thing. Jaden kind of comes in as like a decoy dummy action. Boom, turn the corner, Ant bucket. Like that's the stuff they want him to do. And then it's the same action here. Luka does come in for more help there, but bam, like Rudy on the roll. It's the same action, and I think it's, I think it's Finch there being like, okay, let's just again establish how we want you specifically, Ant, to be playing, get you a taste of it. And then, kind of continue rolling with that night. Again, in the first half, I thought that happened. And yeah, it's funny. You go back at some of the assists. I don't know what Luke is doing. Like, we've talked so much about low man help this year for the Wolves, right? Well, Luka isn't the low man for like Dallas and any of those first quarter things, but he starts like kind of doing his little Luka dance thing, like got his tiptoes, kind of like, oh, I'm in here, I'm out here. And then Ant was just like, okay, well, if you're over here, Luka, and PJ Washington's over here too, he was just kept finding the corner. And then if PJ Washington got back out to the corner, then, Jaden would kick it to the guy who Luka was guarding. And it was just clean. And it was just, I have frustrations about Ant's playmaking often. I do need to remind myself sometimes that we're like 3 years removed from him being like a 0 in that category. Of the reading it. He always like, even at Georgia, he had the like, get to the middle of the floor. I can kick to the corner with my left hand. Like he's always had passing skill, and some like reading ability, but it wasn't ever consistent. And I remember, kind of that it was the first year before Gobert. It was the first time they started putting 2 on him ever. And he would just kind of like cower back and be like, what do I do here? And he's slowly starting to progress. Obviously, the playoffs were a huge thing in his growth there, but it still isn't like isn't an A- or B+ like playmaker yet. So I'm still encouraged by these moments when they do happen, and then also kind of like what needs to happen so that's consistent, because this game was a perfect example of that part wasn't there in the fourth quarter. Even if it was there in the first quarter, maybe that's Dallas has different guys guarding him. It's a different kind of defensive setup, all those sort of things. But I don't know. I think with Ant, we just need to still appreciate the things that go well, and understand that it's not going to be an across the board, like nailed it for 4 quarters sort of thing.
What grade would you give him as a playmaker? Because you said not an A+ or not an A- or B+. I'm just curious of like right now. And I would vaguely put this as just his overall playmaking ability.
C+.
Because I think his.
He gets so much he gets so much attention. So there's like there's a lot of easy passes to make that he makes a lot. I guess I'm just thinking of like, it's all about how we grade it, right? It's the guy, like an A- sort of thing would be the players who are out there and understanding what the defense is doing, manipulating it so you get them into this spot that is then going to free your teammate made up, or it's like a 3D chess to it. I don't think Ant is at all at 3D chess, I think he's at a passing grade, maybe even average. And with his scoring skill set and this 3-point shooting, average makes him an all NBA player, right? So it's
for sure. Yeah.
It's just, this is always the thing with him is if that gets to an A, now you're the best player in the league. That's to me, it's kind of that simple with a little, if the defensive efforts there and all that stuff, like, yeah, that's not there yet.
No. And I wasn't trying to get you. I think we'll talk about all 8 or 9 guys that played in the Christmas Day game. I was just curious because when you do play the Mavs, and again, Wolves win this thing 105-99, erase their losing streak, get back to 15-14, and do so in a game where Luka Doncic gets hurt. And I think that's worth mentioning again, just because that really changed the tides of things, especially in the second half. And maybe we'll talk about how that wasn't great for Ant. But I just, when you watch the Mavericks play, and you said 3 years ago Ant was like a 0, I totally agree with that. I think we forget that Luka probably just came into the league as already like a B+ or a B- because of just how he played basketball overseas growing up. But you'd be hard not to like look at what Luka and Lively already have in terms of chemistry and be like, shit. Like, is that gonna? I mean, it might never get there because Luka is one of one. But to me, there's still so much. And that first play where Ant does find Rudy after his water gets cut off, that's a great play. Like, that's a great play to find a cutting Rudy because not only is it 2 points, none of that matters. It's 7 seconds into the game. But you have Ant going downhill, you have Ant finding a guy, and you have Rudy engaged on offense. Like, that's how you, like, jolt a starting five that I think we've all come to kind of hate. But the next 47 minutes and 53 seconds, I think there's a lot of times he misses them. Yeah. and again, I think he's getting better, and that's what your point is. You watch Kyrie run pick and roll, you watch Luka, 2 of the best to ever do it. To your point, I mean, I think a lot of the offensive stuff would just, I know Jace is probably shaking his head in agreement, would just open up if Ant just found guys on the roll more. You know what I mean? Or like, I know you said that the defense probably, or maybe I sometimes just want Ant to actually get rid of the ball on those doubles, right? Whether they're showing 2 or doubling, because then it's like a frenetic, frenzied 4-on-3 power play. And the Wolves are forced like, okay, Ant is over there and there's 2 guys on him. And now I know there's 4 of us and there's only 3 of them. But let's just attack like sharks in the water.
Right.
So again, it's not fair to Ant because it's Luka and it's Kyrie. But I come out of those matchups sometimes thinking like, yeah, a C grade is probably the grade, and he's only 23. And if he's an A by his prime, you're right. MVP, title contender, like that's the stuff. But there's still a long way to go. And at least that first play gives you some hope. But there's still a lot of times, man, where he just misses the guy setting the screen or cutting or just doesn't get off of it fast enough.
Yeah, well, he can do it. There's an example, and we've seen him do it. Yep. But it's like do another football thing. It's like, in the first drive, it's like scripted. Like we're running this play.
Bingo.
And the quarterback just is like, oh, wow, Christian Ponder is 7 for 7 in the first quarter. No way.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of what that is. Like they've obvious, if it's the first play they're running of the game and they've been running it for the first play of the game for the last 3 games, I'm pretty sure they went through that at shoot around earlier that day. It's like, okay, Ant, you're turning the corner here. And if the help defender comes to cut it off, well, then the big's going to drop and Rudy's going to be here to roll, So he's been coached through that stuff, and he executed it perfectly. He executed the scripted play perfectly, which is maybe a reason to add a couple more scripted plays.
And what was the end, though? What was his last playmaking opportunity? Minute left in the fourth, he cuts in the lane and throws a terrible pass trying to get the guy in the corner, and it's a turnover because that's unscripted, right? And that's like the pros and cons of the growth. And you're seeing it happen. He found a guy that was wide open in the corner, but he makes a bad pass. But I think that's kind of the yin and the yang of some of this stuff of like, when it's scripted, it looks pretty good. And I think
because it's an addition to him being an awesome shooter and him being an incredible athlete. I mean, is it? I was going to say this just like kind of flatly, but I didn't want to. Maybe this like he's as good of a shooter as Luka now, right?
I don't see how you could disagree with that.
I mean, at least like it's close. That's not like a preposterous statement to say he's
not better than Luka, but he is right there next to him as a step back shooter, just a crazy shot maker, get to any spot he wants on the court. Like he
at
can
least
get
from
to any
3.
spot.
Yeah. Luka's probably better in the middle of the floor, I would guess. Just like
But then Ant's probably better at the rim. Like
exactly.
Easily,
So my point is he's a similar level shooter, if not same, to Kyrie and Luka. Physically is at a level beyond both of them by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's deficient to them as a playmaker, but not in a he's deficient. He's lower than they are. You know what I'm saying? When it's Luka and Kyrie. So maybe that's part of all this too. And they were playing against Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And in that fourth quarter, while Ant is kind of looking a little hesitant and not really understanding what the defense is doing, Kyrie Irving's going down the other way, and he goes, "Who's DiVincenzo guarding? Come on, come up here. Let's go. We're gonna run this. Attack. Okay, they took him out. They took Dante out. Now he's assessing the room, and do I want to bring Ant into the action? Do I want to bring Nikhil into the action? Can Julius's guy come in here? And the Wolves are trying to counter all that. There's just another level to that. And Luka came in with that. That's just kind of like his gift. But even he's 3 years older than Ant, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Kyrie's 9 years older than him. You know what I mean?
We are old. Oh.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I was gonna. There's a basketball tournament around here, by the way, and Gilbert Arenas' kid is playing in, so I'm gonna go watch that later today. And when my neighbor told me that, I was like, "Holy shit, we are old." But anyway, yeah, yep. Kyrie Irving, an old 32 years old.
Do you think you have better NBA takes than Gilbert Arenas?
Do you want to do an ad break now?
I do. All righty. Today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino. And this Sunday, December 29th, the Wolves, the Vikings, are playing the Green Bay Packers, and they are doing a watch party at Treasure Island for that noon Vikings-Packers game. Crisco and Wes from the KS95 Morning Show are going to be hosting it there. There's going to be free food in the Parlay Lounge. There's going to be team-specific cocktails. Just a fun place to watch the border battle. It's going to be, similar to when Kyle and I obviously went down there and did it for a Wolves game. But I don't know. I mean, this is about as big of a Vikings game as you can, get in the regular season. And I think it'd be a very fun place to go down there. So if you're looking, still got family in town, whatever, you got the free weekend, maybe you're off until the new year, head down to Treasure Island on Sunday, December 29th. They have a lot of other stuff going on this week as well, including an 80s themed New Year's Eve party. Check them out. You can do that by getting more information and a full list of Treasure Island's promotions at ticasino.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Stone and Skillet English Muffins, and it is a tradition in my family that we make Eggs Benedict on Christmas morning. We did that, and this was the first year we used Stone and Skillet English muffins for that. They're a type of English muffin that is a little bit more dense. It has 6 grams of protein in it. There's more good stuff in it than your just average kind of airy English muffin that you have there. Personally, I love having these guys on as a sponsor, even if it's not for Eggs Benedict on Christmas morning. I'm a big English muffin fan in the morning with some peanut butter or whatever. And seriously, this is just like, if I'm going to be having a doughy piece of bread in the morning for breakfast, you might as well make it be one that has more good stuff in it and tastes better too. I really would recommend trying out Stone and Skillet. You can find them in Whole Foods in the bread kind of / bakery section over there. If you're on YouTube, you can get a look at what the bags look like. If you want to go, I know some people have been sending us messages and stuff about, hey, where do we find this at Whole Foods? I think we just go to stoneandskillet.com. You get an idea of what the packaging looks like. Otherwise, it's up on the screen right now on YouTube. But would really recommend Stone and Skillet. They've been a long time sponsor for us. We love having them, and I love my Eggs Benedict on Christmas morning. So stoneandskillet.com. Check them out. Whole Foods in the bakery section for some English muffins.
I ate one the other day to celebrate our guy Cam, not our employee Cam, but the other Cam, getting engaged. So Cam Meekins, if you're listening to this, congratulations on the engagement.
Hey, okay, Cam. I didn't know that. That's awesome, man.
He actually put the ring between 2 English muffins and gave it to her. No, I don't think that's right. I don't want to. There's a little more Ant meat on the bone.
Sure.
Because, again, thinking of that game, and I don't even think we should have started with Ant, but because I think Julius Randle actually had a really good game. But on the Ant stuff, when Luka does go out in the second half and the Wolves are up, I think at 1 point, 26 or something,
Yeah.
I liked your notes here that Luka not being in the second half, I think, had Ant a little less engaged defensively.
Sure.
And I also think, too, that then makes him, as you put it, less engaged offensively.
Mm-hmm.
And this is okay. Like, this isn't a petty episode or trying to gotcha or whatever. I think it's okay now that the team has clearly said that this is Anthony Edwards' franchise. The trade solidified that. But to just hold him to a higher expectation, right? Like you said, you're lowering the bar on fourth quarter stuff. I'm like heightening the bar on Ant, because I think there are moments where he does just get almost bored. And I know that. Like, you talk to players and like, dude, it's hard to keep it up when you're up 20. Like, it just is, right? Like, the math just tells you that if you go get 6 more points, like, they really got to almost have a perfect quarter. But I just thought there were moments in that fourth where he could have stopped the bleeding. I mean, I know people get on Finch and like, hey, they're on a run, call timeout, But you watch like the stars of the league sometimes, and like Shea just gets the ball and is like, I'm going to get to 16 feet and I'm going to get a good look. And I think for Ant, he's trying to get these kill shots, these like weird sidestep threes and stuff. It's like, hey, the best action right now for you is to just get a bucket. That bucket is a better highlight than you trying to do anything crazy. And I just think a combination of no Luka, big lead. You saw some of, back to your point, 3 years ago, you saw some of the 3 year ago Ant where it was just kind of like happy to be here, just chilling, getting cardio. And that has to be cleaned up too, because I think he could have stomped out some of that Kyrie stuff in the fourth and made this like a 10, 12 point win rather than like a really close game.
I'm glad you brought up the no Luka in the second half thing, because what that obviously changes Luka being in the game. It also changed the way Dallas matched up in the first half. Right, Luka is on McDaniels, and Kyrie was on Ant. And at the second half, Luka gets hurt at the end of the second quarter. Dallas comes out, and understandably, they're like, all right, well, we're gonna have to play through Kyrie here. Maybe we shouldn't put him on Ant, defensively on the other side of the floor. So they started Quentin Grimes in Luka's spot. Kyrie moved to guarding Mike Conley, and Grimes, or when it was Washington in there, whatever. Like, Ant was being guarded by bigger players. I think Kyrie. One thing Kyrie deserves credit for this season is clearly more engaged defensively. He was really working against Ant, but Kyrie was about like 6'1", under 200 pounds for sure, right? Like, part of it was Ant, I think, had bigger, more dedicated defenders onto him. It sort of changed the way that Dallas was guarding overall, not even just how they're matching up, the way they were kind of, and that was, I don't know, maybe if Dallas could have it back, they would have been like, maybe we shouldn't have put Kyrie on him in the first place. Maybe we should have reconfigured this in a different way. But I did think, I thought that was an important part in how he was being guarded. It also changed who Ant was guarding. He was on Kyrie in the first half, which engages him more defensively. And then in the second half, he switched on to Grimes, and Jaden moved over to Kyrie. So that's I get that part of it. You're getting greater defensive attention. That's gonna be harder to score on. I think the best thing would be if in those times when he is not guarding he's not in one of those like slap the floor one-on-one defensive situations, like his next level as a defender is, how do I really become a weapon off ball? How do I get that free safety thing going? That honestly is like Kobe. Like, that's what,
right.
They both, like, Kobe didn't always guard the main guy, but he had a really strong attentiveness to playing everything else. Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the leaders in steals every year, right? Well, he's never guarding the point of attack. Like, that's always going to be Caruso or Dort or whatever that is. It's a different type of defensive skill set, and that's where Ant could grow as a defender. We know. I mean, he came in day one as that. If there's no screen and he's just guarding whoever, can be Kyrie, right? Like, one-on-one with space, like, Ant's gonna turn him, and move his feet. He has elite foot speed for a 230-pound dude. It's crazy. But that foot speed works in other parts of defense too. And if we were doing the grading part of Ant as a defender, you give him an A as an on-ball defender, and forever he is, he's been more in that C range for an off-ball defender thing, he could be really good at that, and probably will be. I mean, that's like those. He's 23. Like those are the steps he could take to move forward in that direction. Do you have anything else on Ant, or you want to move over to Randle?
Julius Randle deserves his flowers after that performance, playing in front of, I think, a home crowd, right? He's from Dallas,
Sure.
And his mom was there. So, again, Ant, just to close it on him, finishes his first Christmas Day game with 26, 8, and 5. But I thought it was 3 times as impressive what Julius Randle did. 23 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. There was a lot of things that you should bring up here, including some different rotations and lineup stuff. But overall, I just thought it was back to kind of the Kyle Anderson, or like the embracing the role, setting the table for others. And when it looks like that, it just looks a lot better. Mm-hmm. And when it's heavy ISO, I mean, even the third quarter when it got a little wonky, I feel like it was just Julius Randle, post up, 20-second shot clock, like just It didn't work. But when it was really good, you saw again kind of what they thought this vision would look like with him at the 4 instead of Karl.
Yeah, it's interesting. It felt like in the second half, because Ant was no longer being guarded by Kyrie, like they chose like, okay, here is the better matchup now that we should go at is Julius Randle against PJ Washington. And I think that's a perfect representation of like where things feel like a couple degrees off right now, where it's like, yes, Julius Randle against PJ Washington is a good option. It's probably not better than Ant over anybody though. And in the first half, it was like a clear pecking order of like playing through Ant. And then like Julius was getting some stuff off of that. Threes, second side playmaking. But when you go directly through him, that's when we get a little bit more of those stickier possessions bogged down. And to Julius's credit, why he had such a good game, 23, 10, and 8, is he was like making some of those like fadeaway post ups on PJ Washington in the third quarter and stuff like that. But it felt more, sort of clogged up, slower than it was in the first half. I thought the first half with Julius Randle, specifically in the non-Ant minutes, was really encouraging in that you just saw that pace, that like the other guys running and pulling him. And I think where my head shifted in this game was like, if the other 4 guys around Julius start running ahead of him after he's grabbed the rebound, he will follow. And he's awesome at following and having 4 guys ahead of him sprayed out, to the side and in a spread floor look. Now, if he's got Rudy who plays slower, and is running up the floor behind him, or Mike's like, you want me to bring this one up? Like, like he's kind of back there too. And Ant is kind of lollygagging into the offensive side of the floor, or moving slowly from defense to offense. Well, then Julius is going to slow it down. And I think that's why it's been such a helpful, or it's been an interesting shift in the rotation where, for weeks we were talking about the Wolves' most successful lineup this season was the 3 bench guys, DiVincenzo, Reed, and Alexander Walker, were coming into the game and they were playing with Conley and Gobert. Jace called it the basketball, or the lineup for basketball lovers. Britt calls it the golden lineup. That had been their second unit, basically. But over the last week, they've shifted Randle and Gobert in the rotation of when they come out. So now it's Randle with the 3 bench guys, and it's not Conley, it's Josh Minot. And that group is going and running and is doing the thing where it's 4 guys who are going to run out ahead of him. And, and it kind of inspires more of that play. Like I'll let you talk too. Sorry, I'm going, but this was just like the beginning of the second quarter. I'm like, okay, I'm going to clip these 3 possessions in a row. Look at this one. Just spread floor look. Just spread.
The most spacing downhill that the team had all game right there was Randle catches it in the slot, because he's got DiVincenzo to his right. He's got Nikhil up top. Josh, who has become, I think, at least you have to know where he is, right? Because he's either going to take a 3 or he can get a putback, and then Nas space in the corner. But I'm so the Ant stuff, the Luka stuff. That's how you should start this pod, because those are the 2 best players on those teams, Western Conference Finals or whatever. But this right here that Dane is pointing out on YouTube, or just if you're listening, this lineup change, I don't know, or this rotation change, I don't know if you can pinpoint exactly when it happened. But this is what you and I were texting about for an hour. Like this 5, and I think Josh has to be included in it. Because I think the 5 guys on the court right now, like Dane just said, the 3 bench guys, Nas, Nikhil, and Dante, plus the fourth bench guy in Josh and Randle. To me, those are the 5 most likely guys to be described as Swiss Army knives. Like those 5, and putting them all together, and they can all shoot. I think it's a slight pivot off of not making a starting lineup change, but kind of like making a dramatic rotation change.
Boom. Spread floor, gets downhill here. This play against Lively, gets the line. Like, okay, that's a strong isolation. Shows you Randle when he is going one-on-one, even if it is against Derek Lively. If there's no help, and he goes all the way to the rim, he can do something. And then I think here's the second possession here. Just again, 5 out, spread look. DiVincenzo penetrates, kicks out to Randle, back to a spread. Dante getting back out there is big, right? Dante repositions for the 3. And then this third one is this is my favorite one. This is the transition one, I believe here. Yeah. So watch Julius, just like right there. I'm gonna go back just a little bit. Julius gets this rebound. He takes like this second to assess, right? Yeah. Right here. He's like, what are we doing? DiVincenzo is already turned. He's going up floor. Nas is in full sprint. And Nikhil's like, okay, I'm going to go too. And then, wait, Minot's already up there. He's already up by the other side of the floor. And Randle goes, oh, okay. All right, we're going. And he runs and he goes and it gets right into it right away. And that's just an easy DHO to Nikhil, who's going to hit that like 40% of the time. It's like Julius Randle can play basketball this way at a high level. It's just really hard to play basketball that way in a 5-out spread look floor if Rudy Gobert is your 5, sitting in the dunker, not running as fast. I mean, Rudy still runs for a 5, but like it's pretty different than Josh Minot or Naz Reid, just in how they play that way. And then there's more shooting around him in that group than there is when it's Jaden out there with him. It's a look more befitting to the type of game that this roster needs Julius Randle to play. And obviously they need him to play with the starters and be successful there too. But the hope, right, Kyle, would be, all right, hey, Julius, this is how we want you to play. Here, we'll put these 4 fast, athletic spread guys around with you. And then when you come back in later, keep playing that way, even if it's Ant out there, like trust them. And if Jaden doesn't run, if Rudy doesn't run, if Mike doesn't spread, it's on them. But do this repeatedly. And I think they're starting to set a pattern with that group. And I think it's a good rotation shift, even if it's not the starting lineup shift that many people want.
I think that is the single greatest value Julius Randle has. Everything you just kind of outlined there. And it reminded me of what game 2 or game 3 when Ant said post game, like, Julius, like, you do you and we'll fit around you.
Yep.
And I think to your point of, like we said in segment 1, get Ant downhill early, get his brain classically conditioned so that down the road later in the game, he's doing that again because that's his best skill. This is am I being hyperbolic? This is a seismic rotation change because you're going away from something that you and Jace really outlined that was really successful.
Yeah.
But maybe it was like, yeah, hey, that whatever we're doing, that lineup for 5 minutes is really good. But it still has less value than if we can unlock the best parts of Julius Randle's game. And the Josh Minot comment I made about how he has to be a part of, I'll come up with a good name for this because the lineup for Basketball Lovers is pretty good. I think it can't be Mike Conley. And if it was Mike over Josh, I don't think any of that looks like that.
Do you realize that that's what it was in the second half?
It was Mike instead of Josh?
It was Mike instead of Josh, and that was the start of the fourth quarter.
And this is actually, I believe this with a bullet. Mike Conley Sr., I think he's the senior. Mike Conley is the single most affected person by the Karl-Anthony Towns for Julius Randle trade.
Yep.
Because and Mike has literally been trying to say this, like in locker room stuff. He doesn't always know what his role is, right? And in that lineup that you just said, Julius and 4 athletes, he doesn't need a crutch like Ant needs or like Rudy needs or even Jaden needs.
Yeah.
Julius Randle is the point guard. Julius Randle is close your eyes and shotgun a eggnog. Like Julius Randle is their LeBron in that lineup of just playing a power point guard position and getting everyone else good looks. Because that Nikhil thing, that's a great slot 3 for a 40% three-point shooter in Nikhil 6 seconds into the shot clock. How many times have the Wolves gotten a shot off 6 seconds into the shot clock? Okay, probably 12 times since Chris Finch got here. So I think that is the biggest takeaway from that game is that lineup. And and I think we should talk some Chris Finch here every now and then. The fact that they didn't go back to it in the second half is, I still ride for Chris Finch. He's apologized more for mistakes this year than ever before. I am noticing more blemishes on his right. You can't do that. Like the Josh stuff. Why doesn't Josh get to come in?
Okay, can I cut in here, and I'm going to come off as a Finch defender, but this is what happened. Josh came over to the table at 2.5 minutes left in the third quarter, at the exact same time he came over to the table in the first quarter. It's the same rotation. They're trying to get back to it. And well, literally, anybody watching this, go pull up the game and watch the last 2.5 minutes of the third quarter. Josh Minott is sitting at the scorer's table on the ground, waiting to check into the game. And there's no whistle in the final 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
And Josh checks in with 2 seconds left in the fourth quarter for because that's when the last 2 minutes there wasn't a whistle. So they obviously realize what this lineup is and does, and they want, to get to it. And then they didn't get to it late in the third quarter. And now Josh is in for the last 2 seconds. They're like, okay, well, maybe we're not getting to it now because now it's the fourth quarter and we're just going to go, to Conley, which was the wrong decision. That group didn't work, but it would be wrong to say that they weren't trying to go back to it. It's just evidenced by literally my not sitting at the scores table.
Great observation. End of the third quarter, 90-68. I bet you could have found a way to sub Josh in the fourth quarter.
For sure. Yep.
Right? Like, and what you're saying is valid. I saw that in the notes, but I'm just saying, it's kind of like a couple of games ago against the Knicks or whatever when Nas has those early fouls. You can't just be derailed.
Facts. Yep.
Because there's a random whistle. Like, we have got to be because now I'm losing faith in my best coach ever, and I still ride for Chris Finch, and I still think he's the guy to fix this. But if you found something that was so valuable and not just on the court, but probably off the court, it was like, okay, Julius is smiling. We never see that. Like, players are running and trying.
Right.
This team. I will. We had our differences a month ago. I will ride now that every game. I don't care what the situation is or the context. If I look in the box score and 8 guys played, I'm going to be upset. And we haven't even said Rob Dillingham's name, and that is a chapter for another day, whatever. But I just think Josh is giving him such great minutes right now because you don't know what to expect. I don't know what the scouting report is on Josh Minott other than crazy athletic. And that's what this team just needs right now. He's going to hit a couple of those corner threes. He didn't. Actually, I think he was 1 for 3 from the field, but he missed the 2 corner threes. But just his length, his size, his athleticism, I think Julius kind of trusts him in spots. So
I think they need him to rebound in that group. That's my biggest thing.
And he can do it. I think he can do it.
Because that front court's weak rebounding. Reed and Randle.
He's
So if he's at the 3, he's 6'9", and he's bigger. I think he helps us. So I was like, okay, why do they go to this lineup? What are the values? We touched on the Julius stuff. I think the value is you take more of Julius's minutes away from the minutes he plays with McDaniels and Gobert, which is this really is we had this conversation about Kyle Anderson last year. It was when Kyle Anderson was out there with other non-shooters. Kyle Anderson was it was a menacingly bad for the Wolves offense, right? Last season. Now Julius has way more offensive game than Kyle, so he's been able to kind of score through that sometimes, whatever. But it's valuable to decrease the amount of minutes that Randle is playing in that starting 5 group or with Gobert and McDaniel. So you got to figure out some of that stuff, but it's a tweak away from that. It also gets Randle out of that starting 5 group sometimes, which is sometimes a space limiter for Ant. Or for Conley, Gobert 2-man game, because when it's McDaniels, Randle, and Gobert in there, and Mike or Ant are trying to run anything, the defense just collapses in because they're like, okay, well, you can kick out to McDaniels or Randle, or give it to Gobert out here on the saw. We don't care. I think there's value in moving off of that, and then I do think there's value in the Minott part of it from a technical standpoint to that group. I think they appreciate obviously his athleticism, but I think they need his rebounding there. And to the Rob point, it's fair to be frustrated about, Rob not playing. I get all that. It can also be good for Josh Minott to be you can be strong in the stance of Rob Dillingham needs to play 15 minutes a night. I think you can believe that. And you can also believe that these Minott reps and when he's playing, are a good thing too. So I think those are the things that you put together. There you go. Okay. Value, X amount of value from playing this lineup for those reasons. And Finch has decided that value supersedes playing the golden lineup, the best net rating lineup, the Gobert, Conley, and the 3 bench guys, because it should take a lot to let go of playing that lineup. They're not playing that lineup anymore. But I think those are the reasons. I think they can pop back into that other lineup at times if they want to, if the other, if you want to reconfigure the rotation again later. This has worked, and it was a little bit of a risk because it was giving up your best lineup, and that deserves acknowledgement. And I think it also most importantly, it lays out a blueprint of like, this is the best way for Julius Randle to play.
Julius Randle with 4 bench guys is something now like that I will just be staring at moving forward. And I will be critical if you don't get it. Like I said, you should just get 2 5-minute stints. And maybe it's 4.5 because they didn't blow the whistle for a while, but I think it's complete bullshit to not be able to go into that rotation, that 5-man lineup once per half. And yeah, the Rob stuff, I mean, I get frustrated too because it's like, okay, now we're back to just,
nothing,
not DNPs, CDs, like. But with Rob, and I really believe this, Rob will just be given the reins to this at some point. I don't see how the draft capital, his playmaking ability. Yeah, I mean, there's other stuff too where it's like you watch Anthony Edwards play. I think this was maybe highlighted in that Atlanta game, just again going up against an opponent like Trae Young and stuff. But I think the best version of Anthony Edwards has a point guard like Rob Dillingham next to him, and maybe next year it's every pod is the best backcourt in the league, whatever. But for now, I actually do think in games like that, the offense was humming for a while. You didn't really need Rob. I just think Josh right now is my 9th guy, and this will change every single day. But at least now you have these 2 options, right? We're like, okay, tonight we don't really need offense or playmaking because Julius is having a good Julius game, like a green dot at Fogo de Chao. Then let's have Josh in that lineup. But if they get into some of those games where it's like, okay, it's really sticky, they need someone to break down the defense or just facilitate for others, and it's a red dot Julius game, then that's where Rob can go in. But bigger point for me is that it should always be 9 guys. And every game now, you should go big, tall, 6'10" gangly lever or really dynamic, young 19-year-old lever. But each game, I think you got to pull one of those levers for 10 minutes. But don't let me overshadow the fact that every issue or most of the issues that this team currently has, this, as you, I guess, wrote in the email, this bronze lineup alleviates almost all of them. And it's a great find by the coaching staff.
I like the point about Dillingham. Like, he's under contract, he's gonna be here for a long. Like, he can be, obviously he's on his rookie contract, year 1 of a 4-year rookie contract, plus that team control restricted. Like, he's here for the long haul. With Minot, I mean, this is another side benefit of like, this is kind of like your last chance to get a look at him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, his contract's up. He's go somewhere else, whatever. Or going to be ending shortly. But that is a difference between Minot and Dillingham there. Let's grab another break here. Today's show is brought to you by Doer Jeans. You all know I love my Doer jeans. Just a comfortable pair of pants that both look good. They kind of have that stretch to them. It was a great Christmas present to be able to get. But maybe you're thinking, I didn't get everything I wanted for Christmas. I wanted some jeans. I wanted some pants. You could get some Doer jeans yourself. I really would recommend, just like if you're at that point where you're like, my pants look good, they're all worn out, like time for a pant wardrobe renovation. I really would recommend these Doer jeans. And if you would like to try them out, you can check out Doer's flagship stores in LA or Denver, or shop online at shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. My listeners still, through the rest of the month, get 20% off their first purchase when you use that exclusive URL, shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. This is a great deal. Don't wait to get 20% off. Go now to shopdoer.com/DaneMoore. Get yourself some new pants. All right, Kyle, let's, is there anything like more specifically from that game that you want to get to? I kind of wanted to talk about like the Mavs and them losing Luka and what this kind of means for the Western Conference hierarchy. I know we're still at a very early stage in the season, but I don't think I've done like any standings, whatever sort of talk this year, because you're like, whatever, somebody wins 3 games in a week, they go from the 9th seed to the whatever, like, but I was just like kind of sitting there yesterday being like, okay, so it seems like Luka's like pretty seriously hurt, right? Like maybe this is like the cat thing, from 2 years ago, calf strain. I saw Tim McMahon reported today that he's going to be reevaluated in like a month. So, not out for, right? That's what it was reevaluated in a month.
Yeah.
Not, so he's going to be out a long time, which Dallas is still pretty good without him. I mean, they came back in that game. I don't think Dallas is going to like fall out of the playoff picture because Luka is out, but we kind of have like, it was feeling as of Christmas Day, like the top 4 teams in the West were kind of like, we knew who they were, right? It was like Oklahoma City's, clearly won. Memphis and Houston were having awesome seasons. And then Dallas was like the 4 seed, but was like looking kind of dangerous. And I was like, I don't know. I could see Dallas coming out of the West and being the team there. I know the Wolves aren't in a good place. They're 15-14. I think they're 9th as of today. I want to run this by you. Like, does it feel like the home court advantage spots 1 through 4 is like still a little attainable for somebody? Like maybe you don't think it's maybe so whoever's listening is like, okay, that's not like, yes, somebody could get up to the top 4 in the West, but I don't think it's going to be the Wolves. Their offense stinks, blah, 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 blah. But somebody from this Nuggets, Lakers, Clippers, Suns, Wolves, Warriors tier is going to move up right into that kind of first class of the Western Conference as Dallas probably matriculates down until Luka's back. Like that could be the Wolves, right? Like if they do click into a rhythm after like New Year's Day, and maybe that seems like too much of a long shot, but I just think like home court advantage in the playoffs is not out of the question for Denver, for the Lakers, for the Clippers, for the Suns, for the Wolves, or for the Warriors. Like, I think that's going to kind of be there now. And that's I don't know, maybe that's semantics, but it's a different way of looking at it for me.
No, I'm so glad we're doing this because I do think talking about the standings every podcast is kind of lame because, again, 1 week you can win 3 in a row and move up to 4th, and 1 week you can lose 3 in a row and you drop out of it. Just to put a bow on the Christmas Day game, honorable mention quick to Dante DiVincenzo. I think everyone should put a pin in his performance over the last 4 games since basically the Knicks game. Yeah, I called him a dimmer switch. I think it's starting to get a little brighter. I think you're starting to see a little more of his personality on the court, which is good. And he took 10 shots. And I was really happy with that. And then Rudy Gobert, too, had a really, really, really efficient 14 and 10. So shout out to Rudy. Big picture, Western Conference standings. I think this is a great time to talk about this because it's New Year's and we're reflecting, and this was 2024 was the same year they made the Western Conference Finals and swept the Suns and all this stuff. And now you look at the standings about 30 games in for most of these teams. And OKC is doing what everyone thought they were going to do. Houston's kind of the Timberwolves story of the year with the way they play defense. And the Wolves will get a great look at them later tonight. I think, it's in Houston, but I think that's going to be a really, really good basketball game. And then Memphis just is so deep. They find ways to win with a bunch of different characters. They draft well. After that, like, gun to your head, a lot of Squid Games references coming up, but who would you like? They're taking 4th, like with a bullet. Because
with a bullet, if I had to pick between the Nuggets, Lakers, Clippers, Suns, Wolves, and Warriors, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, Dallas, Denver, LA, Phoenix, and Minnesota.
Denver. And I don't think the Wolves are far back from that. I mean, but if you said, Dane, if you get this right, I'm going to give you $1,000 at the end of the season, and I had to pick one of those teams that's currently 5 through 10 to get into the top 4, I picked Denver. And then they might be the Wolves.
They might be the most toxic team in the Western Conference, Randle. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I guess my bigger point is that Dallas now has their best player sidelined for a month, and that's a reevaluation. And listen, I took 3 days off from the gym, and I am so out of shape. Luka, a month off, could get interesting. And the way he works himself back into it, I mean, this might be a Valentine's Day thing where you finally see Luka come back. Denver is miserable. Like, you watch those Nuggets games, man, they are miserable. Yep. The Lakers and Clippers, maybe the Clippers get Kawhi back.
But this is my point, dude.
I'm making the point too, right? It could be anybody. And while you're so focused, and maybe this will pivot into kind of my bigger thing, but you're so focused on how this season has just not gone well. and how it's not as fun as last year and all that stuff. It is important. You don't have to change your mind. Like, this isn't as fun as last year. Every day was comparing the Wolves to a previous year. I mean, I think they were 15-4 through 19 games, and now they got to their 15th win 29 games in. Like, that's not great. But the West is so wide open that even like a Phoenix Suns team, and a lot of those teams are struggling because of injuries, which we should add, where the Wolves have just been struggling because of fit. So the Wolves have been pretty lucky on the injury front, but that's why I stay optimistic or kind of glass half full on this team, is because I think if you can fix some of the on-court stuff, eliminate maybe some of the off-court stuff, which is bubbling and coming to a head sooner than later with this ownership thing, there's no reason this team all of a sudden, like a month from now, we're kind of giggling and be like, hey, remember when we were like really concerned and now they're the 4 seed with the 2.5 game lead on the 5 seed? Like, it is doable. It's not like maybe likely even, but there's no team in front of them right now with this Luka injury that you're like, that team is a bigger threat than Minnesota for the next 6 weeks, let's call it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I hadn't even really been, thinking about it that way. And obviously the Wolves have a really difficult stretch in their schedule right now, right? So you're like, okay, well, Dane, it's gonna be hard for the Wolves to like all of a sudden, by mid-January to have climbed up there, because they play the 2 seed in the West tonight, Houston. They play San Antonio, who's not bad, on Sunday. They play, then it's OKC, then it's Boston. Like, it's a rough stretch. I was watching the Rockets game last night, and sometimes we do the thing where we forget that other teams get hard schedules too. Theirs is like the same. They play the Wolves tonight on a back-to-back. They play the Heat the next game. They play the Mavs after that. Then they play the Celtics and the Lakers. That's what, I mean, it's not quite as hard as the Wolves, but the thing to my overall like point with this is like, yeah, the top of the West looks a little bit more susceptible, with Dallas likely to drop off a little bit, sans Luka. Also, like, Houston could. I think they're a good, solid team, but they got Dylan Brooks is hurt right now. Tari Eason is hurt right now. Like, what if they kind of fall down themselves? What if Memphis? I think Memphis is really good too. I think that they might probably be my number 2 in the West right now. But there's always the possibility for some of this to come back down, and it's just like a reminder for myself, like, okay, 29, 30 games into the season, there's still 50 left, and there's opportunity on the Wolves' end to get more of their stuff together, to find a better rhythmic balance to how they're playing, which they're doing through Ant learning more ways to be a primary playmaker, like we talked about, by making some rotation adjustments that help Randle out a little bit. Like, if the Wolves click into a better rhythm, don't bite each other's heads off in the process, and we don't bite their heads off either, or whatever, there's like a world where they could slowly matriculate up these standings. And my point of this is, so could the Clippers, so could the Lakers, so could the Suns. It just feels open to get in. If OKC is tier 1, that tier 2 of Memphis, Houston, and Dallas, I think is there for the first team that wants to like be about it and really lock in and win some regular season games before the trade deadline. And I know that's where the Wolves' heads are at, and it's an opportunity to kind of go take it.
Also, I just think it's interesting looking. It is interesting to look at the standings right now. I texted you very late last night, but our Detroit Pistons, with one of the best comebacks I've ever seen against the Sacramento Kings, but that Kings team is probably the most toxic NBA team right now. They have trade rumors going. I mean, the trade deadline now always heats up like right after Christmas, because I think Christmas is a barometer for the league. You've kind of gone through the in-season tournament now, and those first couple months, football's slowing down a little bit, and then it's like January comes, and it's a lot of trade rumors and stuff, and we'll see what happens, because I think a lot of those teams are also looking to make deals, right? Like, if you were to think of 5 teams that are going to be in the news the most about making trades, it's probably Denver and the Lakers and the Clippers and the Suns,
all those
right?
teams, right.
And depending on if they can even make trades or what assets they have left. But, yeah, I mean, I thought this was interesting, too, watching Warriors Lakers the other night, thinking about like the depth and stuff. And I know people were really on Finch early in the season because he wasn't expanding his rotation. They're like, look at what the Warriors do. They play 12 deep. Dude, Kyle Anderson gets DNPs. Yeah. That's crazy. Like, Kyle Anderson was a DNP coach's decision on Christmas against the Lakers for a team that I don't think has a ton of talent. So every team right now, if you were to go on their podcast or go to their Twitter links, it's all really like, what are we doing? Are we going north? Are we going south? Whatever. So I think the Wolves, for better or worse, it's kind of why I was really emphasizing like, hey, it's okay for those first 25 games to like experiment. I don't think they experimented enough, but they do kind of wake up today above 500 with a chance now, albeit because of a pretty severe injury to an MVP candidate, but it is kind of wide open. Like, you and Jace were pretty down on them winning on Christmas. I think you echoed the sentiment of a lot of us. Yep. And then they won. And now tonight I'm like kind of high on it. If they lose, they're 15-15 and they're probably 4.5 back of Houston. But if they win, they might be the 5 seed come Monday. So it is very interesting right now in the West, and it's going to get more interesting with the trades and stuff, or possible trades. But I think it's a good time. This is
probably a good time to you wanted to talk about what Jason and I went in on Christmas Eve about the two different, like, this season's team isn't last season's team. The DiVincenzo piece of it, like that's related here, right? Too, of like, I do feel confident saying that it is more where the Wolves are at is less disrupting to them internally than it is in the sense that I get of, listening to people, talk, maybe even myself, or whatever, the people who come on here and the fan base too. It's an interesting dynamic. If it is in fact true that the players are like, we're okay, we're still figuring it out, and actually are figuring out and actually do believe that and aren't saying that, if that is true and they can start to figure it out over the next month, that's what this leads to. The opportunity to move their way up the standings to a point that, after the trade, if it would have been like, yeah, the Wolves are the 4 seed in the West, I'm kind of be like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Effective. So sorry, I don't know what you want to say on that, but you said you.
No, how do I keep this concise? It is the end of the year. I was reflecting back on all the stuff that this team, right? It was pretty toxic before the Christmas Day game. And it was, even, as I said at the top, it was toxic on Christmas morning when my friends and I are like, do we got to do this? But this is 2024. Do you remember the couple days after game 82, how toxic that was when they lost to the Suns?
Oh, yeah.
And they had to play the Suns in a playoff. Like, that was this year. A month before that, we interviewed a couple billionaires. Like, it's been a long year. But I get this sometimes, like we talked about Ant. They're up 26, and Ant's just going for kill shots and kind of playing with his food. I don't love that. The Wolves sometimes kind of feel or play or carry themselves like they're the Chiefs. Like, we were good last year, regular season, whatever, or we'll win this by 3, we'll like whatever. But, and like the only difference there is one of those teams won a Super Bowl and the other team lost in 5 to the Western Conference Finals. So I do think we all need to, and not everyone, like I'm not doing like that, this is how you should think thing. But if I can poke at one thing you and Jace talked about, just big picture as we go forward, because you and I have been doing this.
Go ahead. Use the benefit of hindsight.
We've been no.
I'm kidding. No, you're.
Wolves could have lost by 25 when I would have had this little after an hour mark rant as we, this is the last pod you and I are going to do for 2024. So I'm excited for 2025 and what that could bring for this organization, for us, and thanks to everyone that listens. But you had a comment that it's more difficult to cover a team that's underperforming or underwhelming than just a bad team.
Yeah.
And I love you. That's bullshit. Because that is so not true. And I'm out here in Portland Trailblazer country where like they used to be good, and now they don't know if any of the ingredients in the cupboard are expired, yeast, whatever, nothing. It's harder to put yourself out there and try to find true love or apply for jobs or do something. Put yourself out there at the risk of looking bad. But for the first 6 years or 5 years we were covering this team, we were done. We did 13 minutes on a basketball 5-man rotation today. We were never doing that stuff when we wrote blogs or when we started doing like the idea that you would just rather be a bad team. I'm not saying that's what you thought, but like the fans, I get it. It's very toxic. The Knicks thing was brutal to get pounced by 30 points by the player that you loved watching for a decade. But I think Dante and Nikhil are kind of right. Like, I think you kind of got to let that go at some point. And if you don't want to, I totally get it. I get a lot of people saying, I'm out on this team, whatever. Kind of reminds me of when people post that they're going to delete their social media. Like, hey, you can just do it. You don't have to tell us. But I do think as you embrace 2025 and all the good stuff that could happen, the standings are a good spot to look and be like, hey, man, they're one good week from all of a sudden after this diabolical trade and everything sucks and the ownership fiasco, and they're like the 6 seed or the 5 seed. Like I think we got to let go of some of that stuff because there were people last year that didn't enjoy watching that team and never believed it. And I think you missed out. And this team might never pull that magic again, but man, like, you and I went to Wemby Scoot and we're like, this could be a historical 1-2 matchup. Do you think Scoot Henderson is one of the 200 best players in the league right now? Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like Portland Trailblazers, they don't know what they have. The Wolves at least know that there are certain things. It's like, I saw that be really good. And we might have fucked it up with a trade or the salary cap or the second April or whatever, but we at least can pin our hopes to that number 5 or that big, tall Frenchman or whatever. And like, maybe we just need to make tweaks. You don't want to be the fan of a bad team. You don't want to be covering a bad team because there's no hope.
And I'm not a fan of the team. What I'm talking about is I love this shit that we did here. This is more. I do too. This is more fun for me to cover the actual basketball. What I said is it's easier to cover a bad team. This is harder because every day when I go online, I have to have somebody telling me I'm a fucking dipshit and I'm balding and fuck you. We hate your podcast. I'm like, well, you listen to it. So that part is what I'm talking about. If it's easier.
No, and I again, I was just ripping it. I totally agree with that.
I'm just covering. There's different elements,
but it's easier to never leave your house, right? And a lot of the people that are probably talking shit are actually down in the basement right now of their parents' house talking shit to us. It's easier to just not have expectations and to just be like, the highlight of my life is in April when they drop ping pong balls. This is harder. But again, this is more fun for people that really love basketball. And I'm not going to do 12 minutes on ratings, but if you really love basketball, watching what Julius Randle and those 4 bench guys did was awesome because it was a real basketball pivot that, okay, maybe that's it. I love the process. And I think that's why I sometimes don't always love the Randle stuff because I think it's like good results, bad process. Mm-hmm. And I think the best way to build a championship team is good process and then trust that the results will play off of that, right? How many times have we seen the Wolves kind of cut corners with some things? Or like I said, these 3 straight post-ups for Julius. I don't know if I love that. But I do love the process of getting him out in transition with these other guys. And again, that's just big picture things, but it's tough. And I know a lot of media members are taking heat for not doing their jobs. I think that's complete bullshit. No, I think it's complete bullshit. And I think if you want to hold people accountable, the easiest way to do it is to write at Canis and get a credential. I got 20 guys in that building. Go do it. Go do it. Go put your face and your name in front of someone and ask the questions if you don't think it's hard enough. But to strip it all back and to look at all the shit that happened this year, it wasn't just all fun. That's why I wanted to bring up the Suns thing. That Monday after they lost Game 82 was the darkest moment of the season. Darker than any Karl Anthony Towns trades. Like, it was like, holy shit, we had this magical season. We blew the lead, and now we're going to get swept. And then they swept. So there's still 53 games left, I think, on the schedule. And I'm back now. Like, I'm kind of interested again. Now, if Chris Finch goes to 8 men and plays the basketball lineup in the second quarter, I'm going to be pretty pissed off. But I think this has been a really nasty 29 games. And they woke up this morning with a chance to basically be the 6th seed come Monday. And possibly be in the top 5 by the start of the new year. So it's an interesting spot. All frustration is valid, but it could be a lot worse. And I think that's actually a good time to say that line. It's like, it could be a lot worse, and maybe the worst is behind them. So I don't know. That was just my end of the year rant, but I'm not out on this team yet. I'm not. I think the standings show that there's a lot of teams right now that are in the same bubbler as the Timberwolves. So I didn't mean to call your take bullshit. I know we know you're not a fan.
No, I'm just saying that's what it feels like for me. I would rather cover a bad team than this team.
That I get it.
It's just honest. But yeah, but I love the basketball parts of this, too. And I think it is going to be, and just because if they play an 8-man rotation, try and figure out why the context of that is, and maybe the context of that'll be stupid, but it's all, you know.
And I don't. You said you'd rather cover a bad team. I think what I learned on Christmas again is I don't think this is a bad team. I think it's hella frustrating.
I don't want to cover this team. No, I'm talking about. All I was saying. I'm just trying to clarify to people who are listening, so they don't think that I'm like. So I'm just saying it's a harder as it is for a fan. I was trying to. Which and I have parts of that too. I'm just saying, like, the hardest. My point was, I think the hardest seasons are when a team has expectations, particularly high ones, and they're missing them by a large gap. It makes the day-to-day of paying money as a fan to go and pay for my brother's a season ticket holder. We were talking about that on Christmas Day. It's like, this sucks because I'm giving up a X% of my income to have, you know, a 20-game pack to go to. I'm like, I get that, you know, and it's hard. You invested at the expectation level, and you're delivering at a lower level than that, and now it's not worth the value. It literally isn't worth the value that it is. And for me, we had this conversation. It's like, how I would relate to that is, I still love doing this job. This is awesome. Like, this is so great. I'm just saying it's harder to go into a locker room and interview players or try to find things, you know, to talk about or to write about when it's a team that is not meeting expectations and is consistently not, and is doing it in the same ways. You know, that part that's what's made this part of the first 29 games of the season difficult for me. But the whole point of this topic is they could theoretically be turning a corner into being a team that starts going towards approaching the level of what those expectations were. Ant's performance in the first half showed that. The fact that this team didn't completely splinter a month ago when things were toxic is a signal that they could move back in that direction. And it's what they've been saying in the locker room. It's like, hey, everything's magnified. Like, the flashing light that is expectations glows whenever the trade comes up, whenever they lose a game and aren't meeting those sort of expectations, which just makes it a higher leverage season. And it's like part of being a good team. It's part of covering a good team and doing this too. This
organization, for as long as you and I have been covering the team, just seems to do better when the chips are down or it's muddied. I really believe that. Like, when the Rudy Gobert stuff went really south, everyone was like, blow it up. And they just kind of banded together. I think that's kind of happened with those Ant comments, and maybe we're seeing it now. And maybe they just lose the next 6 in a row. And 2025 is going to be a shit year for this team and in this organization. But I think that's the best way to sum it up. The splinter thing. We use a lot of S's. Structure, splinter. I think the fact that they have bandied together enough and they're bloodied a little bit, but it was an awesome moment to have your favorite team or the team you cover on Christmas, whether you're there or not. It was cool to watch that with your family. But I think the fact that they actually won that game with real basketball stuff that we talked about for an hour, things that are now translatable moving forward while other teams in the standings are hurt or going through trade speculation, I think there's a real opportunity for them to kind of pick themselves up a little bit and try to build off this. And if they don't, then that's fully on them and the coaching staff, because they showed you again, we have the guy, right? We have Ant. We have a really good second banana in Julius Randle. He just can't maybe play with all the other bananas that start. So I'm rejuvenated by this team, basically, even though they beat a Luka-less Mavericks team. So it'll be interesting. And it no better. I mean, I'm glad they don't play Portland tonight, right? Like, okay, you had a day off. You had kind of 2 days off because you played at noon. They should go out tonight and give their best shot to a Houston Rockets team that is pretty tough to play against.
Yeah, and if they do start meeting expectations, that'll be great. And if they start exceeding expectations, that's the best seasons ever. That's the best feeling of all of it. Is that, and that was what last season was. It's just the level of expectation versus reality has a real impact on the viewing experience, and I think I would speak on behalf of the fan base. It's saying that it's been hard to have a season that has not met expectations, especially because some of it feels self-inflicted by trading Cat for Randle. Let's wrap this up with Prize Picks. Today's show. Oops, I got the wrong thing here. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, and Kyle, I'm gonna do two from the Wolves game. Oop, they were up here. They were up here before. I watched the Rockets game last night. Jalen Green was just scorching. And so I'm going to take the Goblin that he has more than 1.5 made 3-point shots. I think they're a real heavy passing lane team. I think this could be some turnovers could be an issue in this game. Previously, I had Nikhil turnovers on here, but I think that one's here. Oh yeah, here it is. And I'll take Nikhil to have a turnover, more than 0.5 turnovers in the game. And because those Goblins, those are a little bit less. If you put 20 on that, you would win 38. But let's put two more of yours on there. I don't know if you did NFL or if you did Wolves specific.
I like Şengün, 24.5 points and assists, more than that. He really takes it personal when he plays against Rudy, as I guess everyone in the league does. And then I think I don't know what Julius Randle's points
this
are.
This one, 24.5 points plus assists.
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about?
Yep. So more than that, you did Nikhil turnovers, Şengün, and then also too, it's just it's almost a free score lately, but because Julius Randle has such a high usage, I just like him over 20.5 points more than 20.5 points. He's only hit that 2 of the last 4 games, but he gets enough opportunities. I don't really know, again, if you did a quick preview, I don't really know how Houston will guard him or who they'll throw at him. Because
it's going to depend if Dylan Brooks. I don't know if Dylan Brooks is going to be back.
I kind of saw a little chance there for maybe a big Julius Randle night. And again, if you're as optimistic as a loser like I am, maybe he builds off of a really good performance on a home cooked meal in Dallas. So yeah, Julius Randle more than 20.5 points. Again, in what should be a really, really good game, because some of the guys that make up Houston's bench mob, whatever, like Tari Eason and stuff, are out tonight. So should be a fascinating game. Minnesota-Dallas at like 6:00.
Yeah. So if you did those 4 picks and you did a $5 lineup on this, if all 4 of those hit, again, some of the numbers are lower there. I have Green lower and Nikhil lower. That'd pay $30. And if you think that's better than a 1-in-6 shot, I would recommend rolling with that lineup. There's a ton of promotions on Prize Picks over Christmas time, and I'm sure there will be more with NFL playoffs and all that coming too. If you already have an account, I know as many of you do, keep your eyes peeled in the promos tab up there for extra things to go in on. And if you want to try it out, maybe now that like your fantasy football season's over and on Sunday you want to still be watching the game and kind of playing fantasy through it, I would recommend trying out Prize Picks. Use promo code Dane when you sign up. Gets you $50 in promo funds when you create your first $5 lineup.
Flex Friday.
Click
the button, opt in, click the button, and if that 4-person lineup that Dane and I just submitted doesn't hit, you get your money back up to like $35 in credit. So win-win situation on a Friday where everyone is still a little hungover from the holidays and getting ready for the start of a new year. So yeah, I always, again, whether we're ranting about stuff, but I always appreciate people that have supported this pod, because again, I was pretty reflective thinking about, again, like the Mark Laurie, Alex Rodriguez pod was this year. The cracking beers with Britt after they swept the Suns was this year, right? Like there was a lot of stuff that happened in 2024, and it was awesome. And 0% of it happens without the people that support us. And for the most part, it was a fun year. But now it's kind of back into that, where I think Timberwolves fans are built for it. Winter, cold, dark, and
lock in.
Yeah. So we'll see how this team responds to a pretty monumental moment for the organization. I think it's the 3rd time they played on Christmas in their history. So
just very quickly, a couple of Houston things from tonight, because I was watching that game last night. And I was like,
they were on the road last night too, right? Like Houston was on the road, and now
they won by 1 million though, and so none of the guys played in the 4th quarter. So I don't think it's going to be too much of that.
Okay.
I know you're a big Pistons fan, and so you've seen his brother a lot. But how much Ahmed Thompson have you caught?
I've watched probably, swear to God, like 35 Rockets games. They're actually the Rockets in a lesser disgusting way are my Thunder, not because they have everything figured out. Just they're kind of nasty. But that dude, the Thompson kid, and he's probably better, right, than his brother right now in Detroit by a mile.
I mean, the defensive stuff is nuts, and I don't say this to take away from like Jaden at all, but it's actually like he kind of functions in what we've been talking about a lot, where like the off ball is like the secondary rim protector. Like they'll probably I don't know if Brooks will start, but last night they put him on Eve Misi, their center, and then they had Şengün guard Herb Jones. They're just like they like to put Thompson on centers because they're just like he's our best rim protector, like by far. He's just a fun type of player. Cannot shoot to save his entire life. He like only shoots corner threes. It was so funny. Like he like only shoots corner threes because he can't shoot, right? But he's kind of like a guard. But he took it above the break three, and it like missed by the exact distance that like a corner three is shorter than an above the break three. You know what I mean? You just airballed it by like 4 feet. So he's definitely a flawed player. Very, very fun player. Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet were on absolute heaters last night.
So was Cam Whitmore.
Yeah, Cam Whitmore. Well, so he was playing because Eason's out. It was I just hadn't caught them a little bit. And the other thing I wanted to say is Reed Shepherd has the Rob Dillingham role on that team. That same like barely plays as the very last guy into the rotation. Like sometimes doesn't get his first minute until the start of the second quarter. I don't really mean to take that here or there or anything. That's just like, they're about the same pick in the draft. Teammates, size issues that probably limit them from playing on two of the best defensive teams in the league. That's just, when you're watching the Houston game tonight, like see how little Reed Shepherd is playing and be like, oh yeah, that's kind of like the same as the Dillingham thing. And I could still be, maybe Houston is doing the wrong thing and Minnesota is doing the wrong thing too. And they would both benefit from more offense. Both of those teams could use it. I just was like, yeah, it's interesting that they both are kind of in the same predicament.
It's not an excuse, right? Being, oh, look, hey, they're not playing their lottery pick either. Mm-hmm. Both teams could be wrong.
I was just pointing it out.
Yeah, I was, again, it's like, I'm guessing if you're not part of the, light years ahead movement for the Warriors, you probably didn't know Kyle Anderson is not playing, right? Who was like, oh, he's going to be this awesome piece for them. And it's like, actually, he doesn't play in games where they could use him. So I think Reed Shepherd's another one. It's like that team is kind of figure out some defense. They're super loaded. Steven Adams is getting minutes right now, which I think could be fun tonight just because I like watching him play.
God, he's huge.
But Rockets Wolves could be a fun game tonight. I mean, Britt had a really interesting thing about how Rob was like plus 26 the first time they played. But I also think Rockets Wolves would be a fascinating playoff series.
I was thinking that last night too. I was like, if I had to guess what the Wolves' first round playoff series, or if you kind of like math it out, I was like, could that be like the 3-6 or something?
Jaden and Dylan Brooks get at least 1 game suspensions, right? Like they're thrown out, and Dylan Brooks is going at Ant, and should be a really fun game. But again, more than anything, we appreciate everyone that stuck by the pod. This season has been way less fun, but I think the people that are passionate about it have not gone away. They're just passionate about frustrating things. And like you said, if it's self-inflicted, that exponentially grows your frustration. So more than anything, though, I hope everyone has just a really great end of the year and is safe, and it's a cool weekend to spend with family and stuff and reflect back. But yeah, we'll keep doing it. And there's a lot of interesting stuff about to happen with this team. So excited to watch.
We do appreciate you. Happy holidays. And next up for us will be Jace and I on Monday morning. We will do a podcast kind of talking about both this Rockets game and the Spurs game over the weekend. So that's what's coming up next.
Oh God, they play the Spurs too?
Yeah, the Spurs on. So that one's at home. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I'll be at that one. Yeah.
You don't want to see them in a playoff series.
Well, they beat them last time. They look good in that second time. They look really bad the first time they played straight, but yeah. Wemby Gobert is always interesting. So plenty more to talk about with this team, and Jason and I will be back on Monday to get into what goes down this weekend. Kyle, I appreciate you joining. Y'all can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Theige, and he'll be back here next week. Until then, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.